welcome to Harmonizing Metrics for
Ah.
Positive Team Dynamics. This afternoon, we have Ximena, Shelby, and Jim all working for UShip. All have at least 5 or more years' experience in different fields in using Agile and Scrum. And they all work for UShip, which is an online company for shipping freight. There is a QR code at the end on all the walls.
I have this thing. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Hey, I'm glad you're all awake after lunch. It was delicious. I know we all grabbed like 85 sandwiches, or maybe that was just me, but whatevs. So, hey, thank you so much for being here this afternoon with us. We are really excited to talk to you about cultivating excellence, harmonizing metrics for positive team dynamics. So let's get it going. Let's get it going. Oh, there we go. Oh, I got click happy. Cool. All right. So that was a kickoff and intro. You saw some slides. That was just a test. See if you're paying attention. So yeah, as you can see the agenda, we're going to start off with a kickoff and intro. Then we'll give you guys a question to get your brains going. We'll talk about some takeaways, our guiding principles and metrics, review some metrics, talk about some next steps, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So please, if you don't mind holding your questions until then, that would be great. All right. What am I doing, right? Here we are. Okay, so let me introduce myself and my team. My name is Ximena Blake, and I'm a senior Scrum Master.
Hi, everybody. I am Shelby, and I'm a senior Scrum Master.
Hey, y'all. I'm Jim, and I'm Agile Coach.
Yeah. So we are the agility team at UShip, and UShip is an online shipping place for large and bulky goods. At UShip, the agility team reports into the VP of Engineering, and we support EPD, which stands for Engineering, Product, and Design. But we also support the larger org at large. This org structure allows us to collaborate together as Agilists so that we can support multiple development teams, and we can work closely together to make sure that everything is running smoothly, and we can talk to each other about our processes and our teams. But enough about us. Let's, as I mentioned, get some conversation going and ask you guys a question. All right. See if you can answer this. Spend some time at your table, maybe talk to your new best friends next to you. What agile metrics matter most to you and why? This is something we want to get to know. What comes first to your brain? So we'll give you about 2 minutes, 3 minutes. See if you can answer that question.
I'm just not going to.
All right. Hey, everybody look at me. Woohoo! Do you need more time? Oh, you just jumped into chatter immediately. I was like, oh, they have like so many agile metrics just on the tip of their tongue. Who is ready to answer the question? Who wants to be the first one? You, sir. Velocity. Why is that the most important agile metric to you?
That's a record of like what commitment
All right. Yeah, that's great. I like that you mentioned commitment. That is, the team makes a commitment in their sprint. And so then you can go from there. Who else? Want to take the next one? Oh, team happiness. Tell us about that one. Why does that one matter most? Well, well, yeah, I'll say out loud too, so that the folks on Zoom can hear us. But you said team happiness, it delights the customer, and there's a commitment and collaboration. And they do it happily. Or no? Maybe they're not so. Yeah, ideally, yeah.
You're happy about what you're doing, then you will see the quality.
True,
That universe.
true.
Outcome-based delivery, OB. Okay, instead of output, you're looking at an outcome.
Yeah,
Outcome would be in the form of how the team dynamics is working. That's why the team is evolving. That's why it is so self-organized. That's why they manage dependencies so well. That's why they have so much clarity in as to what they commit and what they deliver. Because of all these, the customer, the end user or the customer, internal or external clients also have, kind of trust in the team. Okay.
yeah.
It's a journey.
It's definitely a journey, and I like that you mentioned outcome over output, for sure. I think, Shelby, you want to?
Yeah, let's go with the lady back there. I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, so the ones that the team bring to me.
Oh,
They
okay.
come to me and they're like, hey, can we do a team scorecard and see where we are?
Mhm.
Or, hey, I went to this session and I heard about this in the Start Measuring Club. That thing would be really cool on the DevOps Project Management Club.
Okay, yeah.
So whatever they bring to me that they're interested in, that's the most important thing.
Okay, I like that. The lady back there emphasized whatever the team brings to her that they feel that is important is what's most important. I like that. Do we have any more? Okay, back there. Oh, customer satisfaction and value delivery. Does anybody want to expand on that? I think that came from Zoom, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
we'll
I think
take-
Kate had one.
Oh, sorry.
Cycle time and think of a reduced amount of time it takes to get the value.
Okay, and she explained cycle time, how long it takes to get a product out the door. A very important metric. One of my favorites too.
We'll do one more.
All of your work in progress.
Okay.
Might tell a story how it is that's fixing other things. So I don't think it's a classic metric that people track, but I think that
Yeah, work in progress. Especially if in Jira you highlight the column, right, that turns red whenever there's too much work in progress. That definitely tells a story. Yeah, those are all great answers, and some of them surprising, some of them we weren't expecting. So that's great. How smart you guys are. All right, so when we asked our teams that same question, we realized a couple of things. First of all, score. Yes, they were all talking about those metrics. They were all talking about things like velocity, how much work can be completed in a sprint. They were talking about cycle time, how much time a work item spends in a stage of the workflow. They were talking about injects, work added to the sprint after it is planned. Defects, a flaw that is introduced into production. Capacity, a team's expected future availability. And throughput, the number of tickets completed in a sprint. So they all talked about it, they all mentioned it, they were all familiar, A+. However, we realized that they were not telling the same story with those metrics, because on their own, those metrics by themselves are not enough. Because using simple, basic agile metrics doesn't mean that you're necessarily answering questions like, are we moving at a sustainable pace? Are we predictable? Are we focused? Are we working on the right thing? Do our goals reflect our values? So that's when we, the agility team, had an aha moment. We were like, all right, we need to change something up here. We need to evolve. And so to move to the next level, to grow, we realized that we need to ensure that our teams are deriving the same meaning from the metrics. In order for us to evolve, our metrics needed to evolve. So when considering what to do next, we thought about how metrics affect the health of a team. Because as some of you mentioned, healthy teams, that is extremely important. You have to start with healthy teams, otherwise, what are you doing? So in thinking about how to broach this challenge, we thought about how do metrics affect the health of a team? And we believe that cohesive metrics result in a cohesive vision. And a cohesive vision results in healthy teams. And this is because of 3 principles which we consider to be our top 3 takeaways today. Collaboration, vision, and value. So collaboration, healthy teams use a shared understanding of metrics to collaborate. Vision, healthy teams understand how they contribute to a company's vision. And value, healthy teams understand that if they are healthy, they can improve time to value for a company. A company can get to value that much faster if they have healthy teams who understand their metrics, who collaborate and understand what the vision is. And next, I will hand it off to Jim to talk about how these principles helped our metrics evolve.
But you can keep the clicker.
I can keep the clicker?
You can keep the clicker.
All right.
Typically, when we talk about metrics, engineers look at us and go, I'm done. I want to tell me when it's time to complain. I don't really care. Or the other option is, why are you measuring that? We don't care about that. Like as was referenced before, we care about what time lunch is. So it's important to understand metrics are just a tool, especially as an agilist. We think of these as sort of the needle in a compass. So it kind of gives a team an opportunity to point in a certain direction, and hopefully that direction is a better version of themselves. It's important to understand that metrics occur in a context. So every team is different. They're made up of different individuals trying to achieve different goals. They have different strengths, different opportunities. They're all, each team is trying to achieve something different. Metrics ought to look constraining and aspirational. Kind of going back to that needle and a compass reference, it's sort of, when we put metrics in front of a team, we really want them to see a future version of themselves by reflecting on a past version of themselves. And they can identify an area where they can get better. We're always asking our teams to improve. And finally, metrics should feel enabling and empowering. Basically, they should reflect the wins that a team's achieved. All the little wins, the big wins, the successes, and hopefully future opportunities as well. So we have a metric. This is a version of a metric. It's hopefully some of these numbers, some of these metric labels on the top look familiar to some of you. Kind of refers to velocity. We believe that in summation, velocity, capacity, and index equals predictability. A little bit of story time. A couple of years ago, I was working with a team, and in a retro environment, they're like, man, we're moving really fast, but we're not delivering anything. What's going on? It's Jim, please do some research. And so did a little bit of research and found out this blue line here. Don't pay too much attention to the content here, but the blue line represents index. So as Ximena referred to earlier, that's the work that a team pulls into a sprint that they didn't plan to do. It could come from a variety of areas, right? So when you're launching product launching to production continuously, like we are, there's always a possibility of some quality fallout. Defects are inevitable, and so sometimes the defects become important enough to get pulled into a sprint, and we didn't expect that. And sometimes the defects can be so complex that it can take some capacity away from the planned work that the team committed to. So we started tracking this over time. Relative to this, basically your velocity, lay the injects over the top of it, and you get a visual representation of what could be slowing the team down or what could be preventing the team from actually achieving their goals. So this chart in particular speaks to the predictability of a team. Cycle time, Kate, your favorite. So basically, this is a visual representation of the amount of time that a typical JIRA ticket will spend in a status. It kind of gives a visual representation of whether or not the team's moving at a sustainable pace. Too fast, too slow, kind of depends on the team. As we mentioned, each team operates in its own context, but this is a really good kind of at a glance view of how fast the team is moving. But again, not how much quality the team's delivering, just how fast they're moving. And finally, this is a focus chart. So this is something that took a long time to come up with. In talking to our manager, we actually, as Agilist a couple of years ago, we were putting a lot of these charts and a lot of this data in front of our leadership team. And they go, Jim, same question from the top down. Hey, Jim, the teams are moving really fast. They seem to be delivering a lot of stuff, but are they working on the right thing? And so we had to take a step back, ask the question, and kind of look at this chart and say, are they looking, or look at the data and say, are they looking at the right thing? Are they working on the right thing? What that forced us to do was sort of categorize the workflows that might come into a team and basically count up the story points and see where it all fell. I won't go into the individual slices on the pie here, but the OKR slice is big fuchsia slice. That's the stuff that we want a team focused on. That's where the business value comes from. So this is a kind of a, again, at a glance, a visual representation of whether or not a team is working on the right thing. And I'll turn it over to Shelby to talk about team health.
So earlier when we did the activity, I didn't hear anybody mention team health. And this is one of our major metrics that we like to measure. And at USHIP, we measure team health by sending out team health checks. Now, what is a team health check? A team health check is a non-traditional metric that we use to send to the teams every 6 to 8 weeks in order for them to self-assess and identify any problem areas. Once they're able to identify those problem areas, we can now focus on improvement. Now, the whole drive and purpose of team health checks is psychological safety. We want to make sure that we're capturing how the team is really doing outside of our traditional metrics. Now, this is just a visual of a couple of questions that we ask on our team health survey. As you can see, the questions range from 1 to 5, with 1 being something that they disagree with completely and 5 being something they completely agree with. They might look a little familiar. We were inspired by the Spotify squad health check model, in which they use a systemic approach with clear visualization. And so we wanted to do something similar. We crafted questions, put it on a Google form. We sent it out to the teams. This team sent it back to us, and we compile the results of these team health checks in a chart, which we'll get into later. So these are just a couple of questions that we deem important. We like to ask questions like, are you having fun? How do you feel about leadership communication? How do you feel about leadership support? Yeah, we want to know everything. How do you feel about the value that you're bringing? We want to make sure that we're crafting questions that get a complete picture of the state of the team. And as Agilists, it's up to us to focus on problems and opportunities and have those conversations that ultimately lead to change. So here's a visual of the team health check results chart that I was talking about. This is team ABC. And this is a chart from a 5-month period. As you can see, once we start to visualize the team health checks in this way, you can start to identify trends, and then we can have those conversations that lead to improvement. Now, how did we make a change? So all of us had running themes in our team health checks from our teams. You know, we were getting feedback like, oh, the meetings are dragging. We have meetings all day. I can barely do my work. And so we decided to do something about it. We wanted to optimize meetings. And how do we do that? We started implementing a couple of things. One was ending meetings, all meetings 5 minutes early, just so everybody can get a chance to take a breather, take a break, regroup, and prepare for whatever else was next on their schedule. Another thing that we did was implement everybody's favorite day, meeting-free Wednesdays, where everybody gets to focus on their work without any meeting interruptions. So those changes were stemming from these team health check results. And that in turn led to more productive and engaged retros, one-on-ones, and that also led to increased mutual trust between leadership and the teams. Now, what happens when you focus on team health? There's several things that happen. One of them being enhanced collaboration and productivity. When team members are healthy and functioning well, they collaborate more effectively. They communicate openly, share ideas, and work cohesively towards their goals. And that overall boosts productivity and efficiency. Another thing is faster problem solving and innovation. Now, in a healthy team environment, people feel more comfortable expressing their opinions, raising concerns. For instance, one of my teams, they called me out. They called me out during retro. That happens sometimes. They were giving me the feedback that they felt disconnected from each other. You know, in a virtual landscape, that does tend to happen when you have people working remote, some people going to the office, some people don't. And so their fun score on our team health checks was low. And so we make a commitment to implement a couple of things as a team. We implemented bi-weekly and weekly virtual hangs that we all committed to go to every week, because we've tried it in the past, and if one person says that they're gonna not go, then all of a sudden everybody was like, yeah, I got this, yeah, I have to do this. So we made a commitment to attend these virtual hangs. We also made a commitment to do monthly in-person hangs for the people who were in person. And we also made sure to include the people who were virtual somehow in that process. Now, after doing that, we were able to see the difference between the fun score from before and after those changes. Another thing that happens when you focus on team health is improved decision-making. Healthy teams encourage constructive debate and critical thinking. When team members feel empowered and to voice their opinions and challenge each other respectfully, it leads to well-rounded discussions and ultimately better decision-making. And another thing that happens is positive organizational culture. Team health contributes to overall culture by shaping the way employees perceive their workplace and their role within it. A culture that prioritizes collaboration and mutual respect fosters a sense of belonging and pride. Now, what's next? Metrics is just a piece of the puzzle. By making an important aspect of our process, it enables us to make the appropriate adjustments and changes for the teams being happy, working more efficiently, and eventually also improving time to value. So the first thing that happens, one crucial step to do is to talk to business leaders. Have meaningful conversations with those business leaders and understand what's important. By doing so, we can gain valuable insights in what priorities and objectives matter to the organization. Once we've done that, we can now clearly define the desired outcomes we aim to achieve. Now, these outcomes should revolve around fostering environments where healthy teams thrive. Once we do that, we can develop metrics. They play a vital role in gauging how our progress towards our desired outcomes. However, it's crucial that these metrics go beyond just productivity numbers. We want to make sure we're ensuring the well-being and health of these teams. Another thing is don't weaponize team metrics. It's essential to emphasize that each team is unique with its own challenges, its own strengths. Comparing teams against each other detracts from collaboration. We want to make sure that we're celebrating the wins, the progress, and successes along the way. And lastly, we want to encourage teams and empower them to own their outcomes. When teams feel a sense of ownership, they're more likely to be committed to achieving their desired results. Now, by implementing all these steps, we can create an environment where healthy and productive teams thrive. Now, remember, it's not about the wins and losses. It's about driving continuous improvement, and metrics helps us to do that. Any of y'all can do it. You don't have to be a VP or director or anything like that. You don't have to be a Scrum Master. The change just starts with you. Any questions? Let's start with you.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. How do you take out bad habits when it comes to emphasis on velocity? You have a contractor in the team, you have full-time, and the contractor has a perception that expectation from their manager is how many points they will complete in the sprint, which doesn't even translate fully. How do you take out that bad habit?
Sure. The question was, how do you remove the bad habit of overemphasis on velocity as a key metric, a key driver for a team's output? There's a lot of ways to talk about that. I would personally, as an agile coach, I'd go straight to the manager and ask them why velocity is so important to them, and maybe go to the team and say, what else is important to you? And maybe help the manager understand that, the speed and direction of the team aren't the only things that matter. There's a variety of ways to approach getting the data that could support your argument. One is coming right out of retros. I mean, have a retrospective with the team, overemphasis of velocity from the manager to the team is going to come up in a retrospective. I can guarantee you that if the right questions are asked. So it's important to have an honest conversation about it. I got to couch all this by saying velocity does matter. The speed of a team does matter. It's just how much does it matter? And it's really sort of a balance between, a happy, healthy team, productive team, a performant team, and are we achieving our goals? It's sort of, velocity is kind of a piece of that big puzzle. It's kind of just helpful to help the manager understand that.
In my experience, when velocity has come up in that context from a developer, more often than not, I've seen it come from someone who's new to the company, and they probably come from somewhere where that was a big deal, and they were like, oh, at my last company, it was a really big deal. So they're kind of nervous about it. And so if you have enough one-on-ones with them, and eventually they'll notice that the culture of the company, at least at UShip, is not that way. But a lot of times it's some sort of baggage from somewhere else, and you're like, no, velocity matters, but it's more of a metric that we want to use to understand, to have the conversation. Are we working on the right thing? Do we need to change how we do sprint planning? So it's always great to get that feedback and establish the culture of health versus numbers.
It's kind of maybe a couple online questions here. What metrics do you suggest to keep team focused on team performance rather than individuals? Boy, what a great question. I don't know that there's a metric that can do that. I don't know if you guys have
What
a
was the
different
question
opinion.
again?
The question was, what metrics do you suggest to keep team focused on a team performance rather than individuals? To me, that feels like a culture question. That feels like, is your team set up to identify team performance? Like, kind of the name on the back doesn't matter as much as the name on the front, sort of an orientation. Hopefully y'all getting what I'm saying, but that feels like a culture question. I mean, you can probably measure it. And maybe going back to the original, your question originally, velocity can work against you. In fact, if emphasis on speed, but in the wrong direction, I mean, as our leadership, challenged us, hey, Jim, your teams they seem to be getting a lot done, but how come there's no value going to production? I mean, that's that's a fundamental question we all should be asking as Agilists. So I don't know that there's one metric or metrics that you can stand up that would, help a team recognize that their collective output's more important than the output of an individual. But to be honest with you, that may be a better conversation for the manager to have with the employee as well. That may be more sort of a one-on-one in a managerial sense. I think I locked your screen up. While we're waiting on that one, there's a question over here.
My understanding, velocity is supposed to be an internal measure for the team. Should be focused on but that's your basis for not overcommitting. Now the question more is, do you do much to look at metrics and tension? So trying to run too fast, you may sacrifice quality, you may have to work long hours.
Absolutely.
There's a, I don't know, it's just one way balance work hard. Is it productivity, repeatability, quality, and happiness? Because they are related.
What I'm about to say is kind of speaks kind of what makes UShip unique, I think, in a little bit. Our engineering culture, it basically emphasizes exactly the point that you're saying, which is velocity isn't everything. So it may be a culture thing again. I don't want to, make too much of a point there, but the way that we do it, so there's a lot of ways that we come at that problem. One is through the team health checks that Shelby brought up. We emphasize, there is not a question on the team health survey that says, are you happy with the speed of your team? That does not exist on our, so from a culture perspective, we don't emphasize speed necessarily. And in our one-on-ones, as Ximena alluded to, we try to emphasize the importance of collaboration, the importance of, contribution, commitment to team goals. For example, when we talk about sprint planning, there isn't one person in the room or on the team that's saying, this should be our goal. I mean, that conversation will come up, but the team will say that will be our goal. And it's sort of always a reorientation back towards what the team's output's going to be. And that may be unique to UShip, I'm not sure, but it feels, again, more like a culture question.
And all the metrics relate to each other too, because you can look at velocity and go, oh, that's a ton of points, but did you complete your sprint goals? Did you achieve what you wanted to achieve in the sprint? Great, that was a ton of points you completed, but look at your rollover. You were rolling over an entire sprint's worth. So there's a conversation to be had there as well. How many injects were part of that velocity? So did you complete none of the ones that you planned and all of it was injects? So then we're having a conversation there too. So you look at the entire thing and tell the entire story. I think is really important.
And as Agilists, we play a role in the decision making and outcome, but the product group plays a big role in it too. They're setting the vision for the team, they're setting the high level goals for the team, and they're pretty explicit about the output that the team is expected and serve the service of the business. So again, there's no mention of speed, although dates play a role. We do have due dates, right? We do have dependencies. We do block and unblock each other. So, but as Agilists, our job is to sort of support all of that.
When they were leaving, were they staying? And the Browns may show up more than, or they may just have crazy hours, but I always worry about sometimes how subjective. You catch them on a good day, you gotta smile.
I think I can't speak for myself. I don't want to speak for myself, but I think one thing that makes our agility team very effective at UShip, especially, is there's an implied expectation that we're plugged into our teams. That really means the emotional state of the team, and not just the team, the collective team, but the individuals on it. So we spend a lot of time in conversation with the individuals on it. It could be over a coffee, it could be over lunch. It could be, hey, I'm here to listen to what you have to say. And, in that exchange, that can relieve a lot of pressure. Just actually, as an Agilist, going and being an active listener for real, like really listening and connecting with that person, that can relieve a lot of pressure that may lead to fewer sad faces. I locked your screen again, but there was a couple more questions on here. Thank you.
Oh, we'll go ahead with you.
Purpose. Why? you do this,
Mhm.
right? So if you don't work on a brand new product, this is like- But I mean, right, these days are a digital transformation. You already have that whole system. You covered in the platform, these kind of things goes on top.
Mhm.
So Scrum team is not, doesn't decide which one to work on. The business elsewhere is decided. But Scrum team understands that we have so many other priorities and important roles, more value in things here. Why are they taking this one? Then they are in the situation as a principal Scrum Master, how do you motivate that team?
How do
Did
we,
you guys ever run into
how do we motivate a team that feels that they're,
Do you have competing priorities? Is that?
the team thinks that it's priority,
Mhm.
but business or somebody they already decided that it's Scrum.
Yeah.
So at the time, team is not that motivated.
Yeah. I mean, that,
So, how
yeah.
do you work on that?
That's
yeah,
the catch
right.
about autonomy too, right? Because we tell our teams, you're autonomous, but it's not like they can come in and be like, oh yeah, we're autonomous, we're gonna build hot dogs now. It's like, whoa, hold on, autonomous asterisk, like, it's an ongoing conversation of, yes, that's when, for example, in health checks, we ask, does leadership communicate enough? Do you feel like you have enough insight? Or are these things, do they feel like they're just coming up from the mountain and Moses came down with the tablets and like, all right, fine, I guess we're gonna work on this. Like, do they understand how they contribute to the vision? You know, like we mentioned earlier, having them understand what the company's vision is and how they contribute and what value they provide. And yeah, helping them get excited, like, yeah, we know that this one thing, we were excited about that, but here's the motivation for this, the change, the pivot, which, I mean, we're going through that right now of
Yeah.
teams having planned something.
My-
And then our company has decided, well, here's this thing that's really gonna make an impact, it's gonna move the needle. So it is important to have that conversation with the team of like, look, this thing is, you have a huge role in this. And if we do this right, we're gonna see a huge change and it's gonna be positive in the business. But then also communicating back to the leadership, all right, we can't do everything. You said we were gonna do this one thing, so understand that all these other things are not gonna get done for now. And are we okay with that? Are we all on the same page?
Yeah.
It's as Agilists, it's our job to go back to the leaders and say, look, this decision you're making is going to have this impact on the team. Are you okay with that? And if they nod their head up and down, then we have more work to do, right? Then motivation becomes a thing. But, you know, I think it's important that, you know, kind of avoid that whiplash effect that I think you're referring to. It's important that leaders can talk to the team themselves. Hey, you know, we're making a change. Here's the reason why, you know, here's the justification. Let me have it. And have the leader be open to hearing the criticism from the team. Like, hey, that sucks. We don't like that decision. We want to do this, and have the conversation. Invite the leader in to be part of the conversation as well.
Yeah, and
Shelby,
to
did you have-
be, and to be frank with you, that just happened with one of my teams last week. They felt like, oh, why are we doing this? And leadership is saying, oh, you guys need to do this. And so we had a meeting of the minds where all the leaders were there, the teams were there, and we talked through that conversation while we're changing priorities. And they got to understand what was the value add and value prop from the business standpoint. So just having that mutual understanding, having that clear communication, and also understanding that value prop and add of that.
There's an interesting question that came in online. I think it'd probably be really important to talk about here. Just spend a couple minutes on it. If and when a leader tries to weaponize metrics, how do you coach them away from that? Any metric can be weaponized, so preparing to coach away from that should be more important than trying to find a metric that can't be weaponized or not share the metric with leaders. So, man, what a great
Who's
question.
weaponizing?
So,
Show me who's weaponizing.
what a great question. So, as Agilists, it's our job to jump in front of the team when all the bullets are flying. If a leader tries to weaponize metrics, it's kind of our job. Just coming back to maybe using the prior example as a really good case study, it's our job to go back to the leader and say, you can't do that. You cannot do that, and make the case. I mean, well, for obvious reasons, you're going to detract from the health of the team. You can impact, you know, the team's not going to get the output that you're looking for if you're trying to and maybe help the leader understand that their behavior is actually weaponization, comparing teams, saying, well, this team's better than that team because this team's going faster and that team's. So we really, as Shelby tried to allude to in team health, we really try to prevent leaders from doing that, and it requires some training, right? Managers are human too. They're looking at numbers and they're getting, they're just looking at it for a couple of minutes. So it requires a lot of trust building. It's part of our culture. That comes first. If the leaders don't trust the team, you're going to see weaponization of metrics. If the team doesn't trust the leaders, you're going to see this kind of negative impact of whiplash rather than this sort of collaborative environment where there's a honest exchange of information, and both parties can walk away feeling okay.
Even the word just weaponization too, they'll be like, you are weaponizing, and be like, I'm doing what? I'm weapon what? I mean, the first time I heard that, I was like, oh, that's some serious stuff. So just use the word weaponize, and they'll be like, no, I don't want to do that anymore. Who else?
I
Question?
think she had a question over there.
So my part, the first one is, is that what y'all saying about the team health service?
Twice a quarter.
Every
Twice a
Twice a
quarter.
quarter, every 6 to 8 weeks.
first part is, why did y'all decide on that specific date? The second part is, how do you get the feedback from becoming redundant? Because people pulling it out for frequent.
Great question.
Yeah,
I think-
oh, go ahead.
I think that 6 to 8 weeks was the sweet spot for us because you want the team to have a couple of sprints down their belt to see how they're feeling, how they're doing with their work, or how they're feeling about their work. It's mostly, I would say, 8 weeks. So that's how we got to that cadence. Your last question, I'm sorry. What was the second part to that question?
Survey, the active survey.
How do we keep it from being redundant? So that is the whole purpose of the team health checks, right? So we get these team health checks, get the results, and we act on the results. So there should be a change from the time that we get the results to the next time. There should be a change. We retro on that. We talk through these results with the team and make actionable change from that. So there shouldn't really be redundancy unless there wasn't a change or any action taken from those results.
Want to answer your question maybe from a slightly different perspective. I mean, there's not to detract from anything that Shelby said, but we're held accountable to that. The 3 people up here are held accountable to our manager to that, and her manager to that. So basically, if a team's performance as measured through the team health check is degrading and it continues to degrade over time, there's accountability measures. And we require coaching from our leadership, or there's going to be some sort of change. And so it's sort of, we're incentivized to go back to the team and say, what do we have to do to make a change here? So it really comes down to trust building around conversation.
And we did recently redo our health check. So we did get to a
Yeah.
point where we were like, I think one of the things that let us know that we needed to change a little bit was we were asking, I'm trying to remember, we decided to split a question because we asked them if they were getting enough support, And so some people were answering the question, yes, within our team, I can rely on my fellow developer. But to people outside the team, I'm having a hard time. So some people were really happy with the team itself, and some people were struggling with support from outside the team. So we decided, once we started having those conversations and talking in retros, we were like, oh, we need to figure out, there's a nuance there. So there's collaboration within the team, and then are they getting enough support when they ask our data folks, or are they getting enough support from architecture? Are they getting enough support from people who provide other parts outside the team, cross-functional members? And so then we split the two. We were like, oh, okay, great. You feel good with this, but we need to go talk to, or we need to make some changes with how, you get support from outside the team in a timely manner. Because maybe you're not blocked with your own co-software developers, but maybe you're blocked somewhere else. So it was important to get that insight. So then it became a bit of a longer health check, but now I think right now we feel like they can answer it to a point where we have more of an insight. And then I'm sure at some point we'll change it up again.
Yeah.
When we feel like it's a good time to do it. Yes, sir. Oh, 0. I was like, oh, Um,
Well-
great. We're doing fine.
Well,
Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.